July 22nd. Today's format is a general welcome from the mayor to Atlanta, and then we're open for Q&A on any topics that you would like to discuss. We please ask you when you're ready to ask a question, please go to one of the 4 mics located in the area. We are here at the program line. We would like to be able for our listeners to hear the questions that you're asked. Thank you. Mayor Andrew Young.
Well, let me welcome you to Atlanta. And I wish I knew what I was welcoming you to. One of the things I do know is that you're coming to a city that has really looked forward to this convention. A city that believes that we have found some answers to some urban problems, though not all of them. And that one of those things that we learned is that if people can work together, whether they're Democrat or Republican, left or right, whether they're the business community or the public sector, or whether they're private citizens and neighborhood activists, that the Atlanta way of doing things is everybody getting together and talking it over until we find something we can live with. That's worked very well for us. And we think that's one of the reasons why the Democratic Party selected this city to host the National Democratic Convention. And we will be trying to have these briefings regularly to let you know everything we know. And we hope that anything we can do to help you stay informed about things that are going on in the city, or things that are going on in the convention. These are your briefings. And so if there's something that you'd like addressed, whether you want to ask it a question or not, or whether you want to tell us what to expect tomorrow, or what you'd like to hear us get for you, we're here to try to accommodate you. I think that's the biggest challenge for us. We have conventions all the time. We're a convention city that has almost 2 million convention visitors a year. We earn about $3 billion annually in convention revenues, and about 81,000 jobs are related to the convention industry. So people kind of know what to do about convention is. We don't know what to do about journalists, particularly when they come 10,000 strong. And so we're trying to find ways to accommodate your needs, both in our city and in the convention. And we appreciate your help and your advice. We think this is going to be a good convention. I've been to every convention since the 1964 convention. Most of them I was on the outside. Here lately I've been on the inside. In fact, I guess 2 I was on the outside, 2 I was on the inside. This time I intend to be both inside and outside. Because I think that the activities that I'm concerned about as the host mayor are basically that everybody do welcome, and that the peaceful protest or redress of grievances, the opportunity to make appeals to the nation and the world through the media that are represented here, are part of the First Amendment rights that we cherish and respect. In fact, without those rights, most of us would not be here. And so we intend to provide all the opportunities for a nonviolent opportunity to address the concerns and problems that any citizens will bring to our city. And we intend to also have a smooth and efficient convention going on inside the Omni. I think the dynamics of this convention are going to be different than any convention that's ever been held by any American political party. I think they will be dictated by the logistics of the proximity of so many downtown hotels, the presence of the Georgia World Congress Center immediately adjacent to the Omni, that in most conventions people are scattered all over town, and the candidates or the press have to run from hotel to hotel to find who they want to find. I think with the Georgia World Congress Center, which has 32 football fields basically under one roof, and where most of the media will have some headquarters, and where many businesses and agencies will have hospitality suites. That will be the sort of hangout. That's where people will gather mostly during the day, and there will be activities almost every day going on there, with the convention events moving to the Omni in the evenings. And so I think we're going to have greater access and greater camaraderie inside the Georgia World Congress Center. And the city has agreed and planned to make everybody feel welcome, starting with Sunday night programs and hospitality events by our host committee, where various neighborhoods and businesses and community groups each are hosting a state. And those state parties will be going on all over town. Will give delegates a cross-section of the flavor of Atlanta and of Southern hospitality. The rest of the things, even too hard for me to keep up with, but I'll be glad to shut up now and answer any questions. Okay? Can you tell me who you are so I can begin to get ready? Oh, sorry, they'd like to go to the mic.
Luann Sanders with Cable News Network. John Lewis is quoted today as saying, deep down, nobody really thought that Jesse had a chance to be on the ticket. Deep down, what do you think his chances are of being nominated as vice president at the convention?
Well, right now, I would say that there's a pretty good chance that he will be nominated. Whether he will be elected, and I think is another question. But I think we've got to see the Jesse Jackson campaign as a part of movement politics, as well as Democratic Party politics. And it's been a very effective campaign. It has mobilized voters that had begun to lose faith in the political system and the Democratic Party. There was a lot of talk about third-party activity in 76 and in 1980. Since Jesse Jackson's campaign has been active, all of that talk has virtually disappeared. But also, in the 1986 elections, Jesse did a very good job of helping the Democrats reclaim control of the United States Senate. I think that the same energies that went into the nomination and election of so many Southern senators, which was in part Jesse Jackson's doing, but which also was an awareness on the part of people in the South that what Ronald Reagan was likely to do to the Supreme Court was not in their interest. That ultimately mobilized people behind those senators and ultimately gave the Democrats control of the Congress. I suspect that same sort of thing is going to happen, and I think we have to look at the nomination process as part of the education process. And even though the majority of votes are committed to Michael Dukakis and will probably vote the wishes of Michael Dukakis, that the opportunity to discuss the issues by the Jesse Jackson campaign will probably take place somewhere in the convention in the nomination process. And I think that's, in the long run, I think, well, up and down, Jesse Jackson's campaign has been very healthy for the Democratic Party and for the American political process. And I see no reason why it should not continue to be healthy.
One follow-up question. Jesse seems to incite a lot of emotion, and he says he's controlled, he's matured. What makes you think that there won't be hostility on the floor?
Well, I think that there are so many black politicians. Of the 6,000 or more black elected officials, 5,700 or so are Democrats. And ultimately, their self-interest, that's the people who will actually get out to vote on election day. Those are the people who, for the most part, will be sitting in the halls, in the Omni, casting votes for the party. And those are people who have a lot to lose. Also, I think there's, while we tend to be a very emotional, enthusiastic people. And one of the things that is a characteristic of the civil rights movement from the very beginning is how do you bring a movement to a new phase and achieve the victory that you've earned. And I'm sure that there are many people who have not been involved in a campaign who would like to keep the campaign going. And I think the challenge of the caucus campaign is how to help that energy move into the caucus campaign. Not only from blacks, but from farmers, from workers who had their plants closed, from people in the big cities who have felt that politics didn't make sense to them, that the success of this election is going to be capturing lots of those energies. And I think the caucus convention are going to be able to do that with help from Jesse Jackson, from Congressional Black Caucus, and from many, many mayors and governors, and the members of Congress that are overwhelmingly Democratic and that each are dependent on getting out a vote for their own elections. Well, I was in Chicago in 1968, and I was a part of the group of demonstrators that essentially got tear gassed. And that was probably the most emotional time in America in my lifetime. The country was terribly upset over the assassination of both Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. Every campus was in turmoil over the war in Vietnam. There was very little sensitivity on the part of most police forces. I don't think there are those heightened emotions, thank God, right now. I also think that the police force in Chicago was coping with massive demonstrations for the first time. Now, the police force in Atlanta has had a long heritage of coping with massive demonstrations. We have demonstrations here almost every week about something. Our police force is roughly half and half black and white. It's about 30% female. All of that's new from 1968. I saw a very tense situation where it was almost 100,000 people in Piedmont Park, at the city's sesquicentennial. And one of the interesting things to me was a group of great, big, burly policemen came up to try to deal with it. And a young woman, about 5'2", and about 110 pounds, pushed them back and said, "Wait a minute, let me handle this." And she handled the situation. The diversity of the police force, the skill and sensitivity, two people who are demonstrating, since many of our police officers, both black and white, have been now demonstrators themselves. In fact, we had a nice big police demonstration here not long ago, where half the police force was marching on me. So there's a lot more sensitivity to demonstrations, and there's a lot more understanding of the Constitution and of the fact that this is important for the democratic process. So I think that there's significant differences both in the times and in the police forces and in the governments. I think the party has, I think, moved to accommodate change. Many people who would normally be outside demonstrating are now inside as delegates. And the reform of the party gave a lot more participation. But as Democrats, that still doesn't mean it's going to be a Tea Party. We like our politics in some ways rough and tumble. And you can't extend the diversity of this nation in the broad spectrum of people that make up this nation and all of the opinions, when you try to get them in one party, you have to expect a little tension. But the key to our success is the ability to reconcile and resolve those tensions and come out united. That's the challenge of leadership for our country. And it can only be met right now in the Democratic Party.
So, Mayor, I'm glad to see you follow up on this question. As a person who has brought diverse elements together to work out tough problems, what's your public message to Michael Congress? What should he specifically do to bring Jesse Jackson and his supporters into the camp?
Well, I think that what he's done all along is to be very open and cordial, but I think very firm in his resolve. This party has elected Michael Congress as its nominee, and Michael Congress was then entrusted by this party to develop a strategy that will bring victory in November. His primary responsibility is to bring that victory in November. He can't do anything to Jesse Jackson or any of our cities, any of our poor. He can't do anything for the economy unless he wins the election. And I think the primary concern has got to be winning that election. And I think Lloyd Benson's selection represents a strategy that he has chosen. I think he's got to sell that strategy. He's got to sell that strategy to Jesse Jackson personally, to Jesse Jackson followers. I happen to agree with that strategy. I was introduced to Lloyd Benson in 1973 by Barbara Jordan. And Barbara Jordan, even back then, was advocating Lloyd Benson as the kind of person that she would support as President of the United States. I happen to be supporting Jimmy Carter. But we both agreed that we would be very comfortable with either one representing the South and the nation, either as President or Vice President. I think that Benson has already beaten Bush in Texas. Bush has never won an election statewide. Have somebody that's beaten him in his home state, I think is one way to really give this ticket an opportunity to win. And that's our main concern out of this convention.
If I could follow up specifically, what should the Congress do? Should he, as soon as possible, sit down in a public room with Jesse Jackson and iron things out between them, one person to one person?
One of the reasons why I have come to like Congress is that he's a man who keeps his own counsel. He's a man who is pretty strong in his own convictions, and he has prevailed through the primary season when a lot of people, including me, gave him a lot of different advice. It turned out that his own counsel was better than the advice I was giving through the primary. And so I'm ready to let him work this out in his own way, because I think the only thing he's got to sell to the American people is his own integrity and his own strength. And this is the first of many, many challenges to that. And I'm sure he'll take it and try.
Do you think of Hosea Williams' plans to march during the convention?
Hosea is welcome to march any day and every day, anywhere. But I just like to remind you that Hosea was a record supporter. I told him I hope he's planning also to march in Auburn. It seems to me that ought to be as much his concern since he kind of helped us get into this mess we've been in for the last 8 years.
Mayor Johnson, to follow on Jackson for a minute. Do you think that the selection of Benson the day after Jackson announced that yes, would seriously entertain and accept as vice president. Does that mean that black leaders now have to redouble their efforts to try to get the black vote out in November? Do you fear that that kind of decision is going to sway the black voters that come?
The average black voter has turned out better than the average white voter in DC, particularly in the South. And they've done that basically because they understand clearly that their own survival is so interesting. And I don't think, I think by the time we get to November, issues will be very clear. Let me remind you, in 1960, at this time, nobody ever heard of John Kennedy in the black community very much. And the black community, including Martin Luther King Sr., was leaning toward Richard Nixon. And it wasn't until the last months of the campaign that the black community sensed in John Kennedy the kind of leader that they needed. They did it along with everybody else. In 1964, we had a Donnybrook in Atlantic City, where the big issue was the seating of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, where Martin Luther King was really in a very controversial role because he accepted a compromise that would seat one member of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party rather than throwing out the whole state of Mississippi. And people thought that that was the end of the Democratic Party and of black support for the Democratic Party. It turned out that that Johnson won by a landslide. Nobody really wanted, people had, in 1968, there were Kennedy supporters, there were McCarthy supporters, and as a last resort, there were people who, reluctantly accepted Peter Humphrey. The tragedy of 1968 is that with all of that loss of leadership, with all of the controversy in Chicago, and with Peter Humphrey being many people's third choice, he still came within 1 percentage point of winning the election. I'm saying that people in America vote their interests, and it's up to the parties to define those interests. And really, one of the things that I think you're going to see as a message of this convention is that those interests really are not racial or ethnic, nearly to the extent that they were in 60 or 64. Those issues are basically economic. Those issues are basically the broad issues that affect all Americans, and that the ability to address those issues is probably going to decide this election as much, if not more, than the willingness to be specific about issues affecting particular segments of the election.
Mayor, you said that the high-profile black leaders too, he called upon to do kind of fascinating either during the convention or afterward over the election.
I really don't. I think what you've got is basically a very good group of people working with Jesse Jackson. People whom I know and respect, and people who are perfectly capable of doing any bargaining, negotiating, or mediating. I think my role is going to be much more mediating and moderating outside the convention and streets.
Here, border states here with WAGA in Atlanta. Following up on what you just said, you've got two ladies, one transportation, the other janitors, that seem not to be going very well. Are you, first of all, on the dispute involving corporate properties and the downtown properties and the events that you'll be hosting at a couple of those properties, where is that dispute right now? And if it's not resolved by the time you're going to host those events and picket lines that are set up out there, will you go forward with the events?
Well, let me say that these events are for the Democratic Party. The unions in question are basically good supporters of the Democratic Party. And I think that there is a sensitivity to the interest of the Democratic Party on the part of these unions. They don't want to abandon the concerns of their local workers. But I think that I sense on the part of both local and national leadership of these unions a great deal of sensitivity as to what they will picket and what they will not picket. But I have not attempted to bargain with them on this. I think that their interests are as much in a Democratic victory as mine. That if you really want to destroy labor unions, you got another 8 years of Republicans being the one in the Supreme Court. And you won't get a labor decision anywhere up and down the line. I think they know that as well as I do. So I don't think there's any interest in disrupting this convention on the part of those labor unions. And my meetings with them indicate that they're all very responsible and sophisticated individuals that will not do anything to hurt the party or this convention. That doesn't mean that they're not going to make their cause known. But I think they will do it in a tasteful and legal way that will not disrupt the convention.
If there's picketing out there, you've been involved, your staff has been involved, long hours now for a whole week on the candidate's question. Don't get resolved with this picketing out there and a certain number of delegates to our labor don't like to cross picket lines. You go forward with the events.
I think we have felt that we had to go through with the events, that we could not rearrange the convention. Because there is a sense in which some of these, well, they've gone a long time, most of them, and but they are particularly heightened during the convention time. But in making selections for the events, we had to stick with a plan and not make last few minutes.
You seem to be suggesting by your comments that you don't really think that Jackson has a legitimate need. Is it your view that the caucus handled the presidential selection process and notification properly?
No, it's, I accept the explanation of the misunderstanding. And what I understand is that there had not been an opportunity to talk to Lloyd Benson because his answering machine was on and he did not accept the vice presidency formally until after Jesse had left on the plane. But that sort of thing, can happen. And I accept that as a logical explanation, but I have not heard it. I read it basically as some people wrote it.
Given that, you think this process with Jackson would be suggesting that they'll disrupt the union?
I don't think Jackson is suggesting that. Well, yeah, but I think that what you mean by disrupting we don't need complete unanimity in a Democratic Party convention. We wouldn't be Democrats. What we need is unity coming out of that convention. And unity, in spite of our diversity, is something that we have to achieve. And I'm convinced that Jesse Jackson is going to help us achieve that.
That's one more question on the city. You were quoted after about an worker in Atlanta saying if they don't like Atlanta, let them go somewhere else. Is it your view that the city was treated unfairly?
No, and I apologize for that remark. That wasn't the way I thought I was saying it at all. I said I really welcome the critical view of Atlanta, particularly in the early days. Because I think that, we're a struggling city like every other city. There's no problem that any other city has that we don't have. I think we have found a way to work on it. And I think that on most problems, we're making some progress. But we welcome the critical evaluation of our city. I happen to have been rushing, and the interviewer continued to go over and over again, but I frankly, maybe got a little impatient toward the end. And that was my last comment, but it became the lead story of the article.
Mayor Young, Peter Mayor from NBC Radio. I'm wondering, do you feel that Jesse Jackson is setting his supporters up for a major disappointment, to say the least, and the party up for a lot of friction and possible split by continuing to campaign this bus caravan right up until the convention? Last night he went and said, I'm qualified. Is this just rubbing it in causing problems?
Well, I have not talked to Jesse Jackson about this, but let me just say that back in 1964, Ronald Reagan was nominated, and the right wing of the Republican Party was very disappointed and upset. And they went out and mobilized. It took them a long time. I think Jesse has clear eyes on the future. And I think that his campaign is not just a campaign for the presidency. His campaign is for some ideals to which I think he's committed, whether he's the president or not. And it does have an element of a passionate moral crusade. I think that's healthy for American politics. And I think that American politics and voter turnout is the better for it. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves as a nation that less than half of the people eligible even bother, actually it's down to about a third, even bother to register to vote. Somebody's not getting through. Jesse is making an effort to get through to people who have lost faith in the political system. I think this is part of that I hope, if it continues right on through November, will be very helpful for the Democratic victory.
So the caucus is a bit more conciliatory appearances since the Benson.
It's hard. I said, I'm very reluctant to advise the caucus. I think he has been conciliatory. But it's very hard to be so, if he gets so conciliatory that he comes across as wishy-washy, or mealy-mouthed or guilty, he gets called this election goodbye. And he's got to be sensitive, but tough, because that's what we want in a president.
In the reverse way, it's possible that what I spoke about that was the conflict, and I think you should not see it as not putting out rebellion or generation.
Well, let me say, whenever I get confused, I fall back on scripture. And the Bible says all things work together for good for them that love the Lord. That's the reason I sort of take it as it comes. And I think these challenges, these demonstrations, all of the tumble and turmoil of American politics, I think is good when a Democratic Party leader can bring it into the fold and generate that energy toward dealing with the election. Can you imagine Bush trying to deal with Jesse? I mean, think of the comparison.
You acknowledge the conflict that reports in the question, you seem to be reluctant to Jackson back into
No, I don't think it's a rebuff. I think it's the caucus has got to represent a single-minded determination to stick by his convictions. And he opened it up, and he did it. He consulted with everybody. He talked to Jesse at least 2 or 3 times. That I, read about. And I don't know how much they talked otherwise. But then he decided something different. Whether you agree with him or not on that, the American people in the Democratic primary gave him the right to make that choice. And he made that choice, and he's got to fight for it and live with it. And I think people ultimately will respect you when you stand up for what you really believe you're doing, that what you really believe you're doing is right, and that it's in the best interest of the party and the country. Well, I think it's very significant that we can come south of a city like Atlanta. And it really does represent a considerable amount of progress. As late as 1960, we could not have held this convention here, and all the delegates even stayed in the same hotels. I think it's nothing short of miraculous that we have overcome the kind of differences that we have in this region of the nation, and the long history of struggle in so short a time. The kind of diversity that we have in the city is contributing to extremes of violence in Johannesburg, Beirut, and Northern Ireland. And we have all of that diversity that's present in other parts of the world, and we've been able to hold people together and to profit and grow together in spite of our diversity. And I think that's part of the message of America. And I think right now it's as well exemplified by Atlanta as it is anywhere else in the country. We were recently voted just yesterday as by some group of business executives, very few of whom are from Atlanta, as the best place in the United States to do business. There are probably a number of reasons for that. But one of the reasons is the political and social climate. And I think that's what the Democratic Party sees. And I think the Democratic Party can take a lot of the credit for that. It was, after all, John Kennedy. It was a Texas senator who became vice president, then president, that passed those civil rights bills. It was a string of Democratic governors that began to involve this state in international trade and investment. And Jimmy Carter, as president, that moved the South forward. And I think that's quite a legacy of progress. While we know we're not perfect, we know we got a long way to go. We still have all the tensions are still there. They're just not bleeding. We're working together. And I hope as you go around the city and see people at work and at play, you will sense some of that working together. And I think that's hopeful for the party, and it's particularly hopeful for this country. Well, I think that in the selection of Benson, the caucus seems to have probably gotten the best of both worlds. That the election is likely to be decided by people who did not vote in the primary. And it's likely to be decided by people who are not even particularly concerned about politics. And that group of middle America can be viewed regionally, or it can be viewed as an economic group. I think we have a balanced ticket that should help people to feel that their interests and concerns are represented. And both of the members of our party's proposed ticket come with the kind of credentials that are needed. I think the respect that Benson enjoys from the other members of the Senate, particularly the South, I think members of Congress will be very comfortable. I've always been an advocate of running a presidential campaign with the Congress, because you know we're going to have at least 275 congressmen who are going to win. If every congressman also wins with the national ticket, it's a piece of cake. And I think you got a ticket that every member of Congress will enjoy, putting their pictures in the brochure. You've got both the vice president and the president and their wives that are seasoned campaigners. So I think it's a good call. Why and how he made that choice, I don't know. But it seems to indicate not just a personal preference. It seems to indicate serious thinking about a strategy for victory. And ultimately, that's my concern. Ultimately, I think that's Jesse Jackson's concern. And it's certainly the concern and need of the country, and particularly the Democratic Party. Well, thank you very much. And if we didn't do it right, if there's something else you want us to do, let me introduce you to members of my staff: Sandra Walker, Neil Horton, won't you stand, Alfredo.
Back here directly, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was like you back there. Henry Miller, Doug Adams, Carol Muldaur, Clarence Elliott, Linda Disney, Pam Everett, and you can catch any of these folk, and they're paid to help you. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. One of them, you got to give this part of your competition a good break. On Saturday, July 16th at 2 p.m., Children's Express will hold a national press briefing on the state of children in America. And guest speakers include Mrs. Hillary Clinton, Chair of the Children's Defense Fund, and First Lady of Arkansas, Jonathan Kozol,